I matched with a girl named Chloe on a dating app. I messaged her, asking about the most interesting place she had ever explored. She told me about an abandoned asylum outside of town, a massive, sprawling complex known for its unsettling history and intricate tunnels. She said it was notoriously difficult to get into, with a few diligent security guards, but she knew a secret way. Chloe suggested we go there for our first date, a real adventure to test our limits. I was hesitant at first. The idea of an asylum sounded intense, but her enthusiasm was infectious, and frankly, I was bored with typical dates. I agreed. I picked her up from her apartment, a short 10-minute drive, then we set off on the 40-minute journey to the asylum. The drive was a mix of nervous anticipation and surprisingly good conversation. We talked about our fears, our wildest dreams, and the craziest things we had ever done. By the time we arrived, the initial awkwardness had completely melted away. Chloe directed me to park on a secluded, overgrown service road, nearly a quarter mile from the main entrance. We had to cut through a dense thicket of trees and crawl under a rusted section of a fence that was almost entirely obscured by ivy. It was a tight squeeze, and my jeans snagged on a broken wire, but we made it through. We used small, tactical flashlights she had brought, their beams cutting sharp, narrow cones through the inky blackness. Chloe led the way, a whisper in the dark, navigating the overgrown paths that snaked around the building's perimeter. We finally reached a barely visible, boarded-up window in the back, high off the ground. She expertly pried off a loose board and helped me hoist myself through. Inside, the air was thick with dust and a chilling dampness. The silence was profound, broken only by the drip of water somewhere in the distance. Chloe moved with a practiced ease, leading us deeper into the labyrinthine corridors. We explored patient rooms with peeling wallpaper, an old recreational hall with a forgotten piano, and even the dimly lit, terrifying morgue. It was unsettling, but the thrill of discovery kept the fear at bay. On the third floor, as we were marveling at the decayed grandeur of what must have been the doctor's lounge, Chloe laughed a little too loudly. The sound echoed eerily through the empty space. I shushed her, a cold prickle running down my spine. The air grew heavier, the silence more suffocating. Then, from directly below us, a low, guttural moan reverberated up through the floorboards, a sound of profound anguish. I whispered, "What was that?" Chloe's face was pale in the flashlight beam. "I do not know. I have never heard anything like that here." We killed our lights, plunging into absolute darkness, listening intently. Suddenly, a series of rapid, heavy thumps echoed up the stairwell we had just ascended, like something large and desperate was scrambling its way up. Panic seized us. We fumbled for our lights, turning them on and bolting down a side corridor, our hearts hammering against our ribs. We ran, stumbling through the dark, trying to find another way out. Chloe, despite her shaken demeanor, managed to lead us to a hidden utility staircase spiraling downwards. We clattered down the steps, the thumping sounds from above still echoing. We emerged into a basement level, a maze of pipes and grimy walls. The air here was even colder, almost biting. "It has to be another explorer," I panted, but Chloe shook her head. "No, the sounds and the feeling, it is different." Then, from a parallel corridor, we heard a distinct dragging scrape, followed by a wet, sucking sound. Whatever it was close, and it was moving. We scrambled, finding another forgotten door that led into a series of narrow, winding tunnels. Chloe said they were old service tunnels, rarely accessed. We crawled through them, dust and cobwebs clinging to us. The sounds of pursuit faded, but never completely disappeared. We were lost in the dark, suffocating tunnels, relying only on Chloe's memory and our dwindling phone batteries. After what felt like an eternity, the tunnel opened into a vast, cavernous space. It was too dark to see the ceiling, but the air was stagnant and heavy. We shone our lights around, revealing rows of rusted, empty gurneys, surgical tools strewn across tables, and stains on the concrete floor. This was the old operating theatre, connected directly to the morgue. And then we heard it, a soft, raspy whisper from the far end of the room. It was barely audible, but it chilled me to the bone. "You should not be here." We spun our flashlights towards the sound, and there, slowly emerging from the shadows, was a figure. It was impossibly tall and gaunt, its limbs contorted at unnatural angles. Its face was a skeletal mask, and its eyes, 2 points of glowing, malevolent red, fixated on us. It did not move fast, but its slow, deliberate steps toward us were more terrifying than any sprint. "Run!" Chloe choked out, her voice barely a whisper. We turned and fled, scrambling back into the narrow tunnel, the whisper echoing behind us, growing louder, more menacing. "You will stay forever." We crawled, clawed, and pushed our way back through the tunnels, the creature's whispers and dragging footsteps unnervingly close. We burst out of the tunnel and ran blindly through the basement corridors. We found the same utility staircase we had come down and ran up it, our legs burning, our lungs screaming. We stumbled through the 3rd floor, our flashlights sweeping wildly, desperate for the window we had entered through. We found it, still open, a sliver of moonlight offering hope. Chloe went first. Then I pushed myself through, my heart racing, convinced those skeletal hands would grab me. But they did not. We ran through the thicket of trees, under the rusted fence, and sprinted down the service road to my car. We jumped in, locking the doors, collapsing into the seats, gasping for breath. The silence was a relief, but the image of those red eyes was seared into my mind. That night was a complete nightmare. Yet, somehow, surviving it together created an undeniable, intense connection between us. We drove away, not stopping until we found an all-night diner. We talked for hours, reliving every terrifying moment, trying to make sense of what we had seen. I dropped her off as the sun began to rise. Chloe and I dated for a few months after that. The shared trauma definitely created an intense bond, but the sheer terror of that night was too much to build a lasting relationship on. We remained good friends, though, and neither of us ever again dared to return to that asylum. That was the end of our night inside the asylum. I do not know what we saw, or what followed us through those tunnels, but I know this: some places are meant to stay forgotten. If you made it through this story, consider yourself lucky, and if you ever find yourself near an old asylum, keep walking. Like, share, subscribe. We are just getting started. "3 years ago, I contracted bacterial meningitis. I live in South Florida, and I do not believe there was an outbreak or anything. I do not know how I caught it, or who I could have caught it from. I started developing really bad symptoms, painful headaches, confusion, sleepiness, nausea, no appetite. But when the hallucinations started, that was when I knew I had something really serious. Laying sick in bed while my husband was at work, I heard a child's voice call out from downstairs, "Mom, we do not have any kids." I dragged myself out of bed to look down the stairway. I called my husband's name. Of course, he did not answer. He was at work. The headache I got from standing was too much, so I went back to bed. Then, for a second time, I heard a voice call from downstairs. "Hello." I picked up the phone and called my husband, freaking out that I was hearing a scary child's voice from inside the house and that I thought I was hallucinating. He heard how distressed I was. He left work early to bring me to the hospital. While waiting for him to get home, I changed out of my pajamas. But while doing so, I had to run to the bathroom to throw up. As I was mid-throwing up, I heard another voice from outside the bathroom. I could not hear what it said or tell if it was the same as the other voice. I was losing my mind. I was not diagnosed until I arrived at the hospital. If untreated, it could have been very serious, even fatal. The doctor told me the hallucinations were unusual, but not unheard of. I was given antibiotics through a needle shortly after arriving. The doctor told me I was fortunate to have come in quickly. If I had waited longer, it could have had lasting effects or even been fatal. My husband stayed with me for a few hours in the room. I was told I would need to stay there for a few days to a week, given how severe my symptoms were. Around 10 o'clock, my husband left to go home. He had work the next day. The nurse told me to call if I had any issues. Though I still felt like absolute death, I nodded off pretty quickly. I started having a dream where my ex-husband was in the room, standing over my bed, looking down at me, talking. He was saying horrible things about my current husband. He patted my head and said he came as soon as he saw my husband had left. He ranted about how he despised my husband and wanted to kill him. I woke up in a drowsy, light-headed state and looked around the room. A chair had been pulled up in front of my bed. It had not been there when my husband left. It was still the middle of the night, so I went back to sleep. I woke up the next morning to the nurse in the room. I told her about the weirdly vivid dream I had. She chuckled and told me that was not a dream. Someone claiming to be my cousin David had visited me. I told her, "I do not have any cousins in the state." Her expression changed. She looked more serious now. She said, "Someone who said they were your cousin David visited you last night. David was the name of my ex-husband." After explaining better, the nurse got a doctor. He told me the antibiotics may have caused delirium, which blurred my sense of sleep and wakefulness. I called my husband and told him what happened. He was livid and concerned. He came back that night after work. That day, I texted David asking what he was thinking visiting me and how he even knew I was in the hospital. My text delivered, but he ignored it. I sent a follow-up, saying I heard his threats toward my husband and would get police involved. Minutes later, he responded. He said he never made any threats. He only came to make sure I was okay, that I must have heard things in my sleep. I responded, "Stay out of my life or I will get police involved." He did not respond after that. I never told my husband about the threats I heard. I was not sure if they were real. Between the antibiotics and the hallucinations, I could not trust my own memory. I left the hospital the next week. Physically, I recovered. But something inside me stayed disturbed, something too close to danger. I keep my bedroom door locked now, and I have never heard that child's voice again. At least, not while I have been awake. That was the end of it. I never saw David again. Whether he truly visited or was just part of the fevered blur, I still do not know, but I survived. And something about that night still lingers in the back of my mind, like a whisper that never quite leaves. If you felt the chill of this true story, do not forget to like the video, share it with someone who loves real horror, and subscribe for more stories that stay with you long after the screen goes dark. This is just the beginning.